Welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Kendrick Coates. We're bringing you another episode. Many of these speaks or talks that we have are centered around mental health, but we're going to switch gears up today and give you something a little bit different. I'm joined by three other guests, but before we get started, if you haven't gone out yet to view our previous episodes, please do us a favor. Go out there, support the cause. Go out there and support many of the conversations that we're having. But I've got Grant Jones in the house today. Grant, how you feeling?
Good. I'm still in Dr. EGOOD. Yes, sir. Like good burger, good burger. Welcome to Good Burger. I'm good, man. How y'all doing?
I love it. Always bringing that sense of humor.
Always.
Dr. E, how you feeling today?
Good. You know what I'm saying? Since we get it in, I'm feeling good, feeling great. How are you? Do. Yeah, that's a good day though.
I love it.
Outcast.
Vince B, how you doing?
Yo, I have no song for y'all. I'm so sorry. I came super unprepared, but I am also feeling good. I thought Grant was having a seizure or something. I was like, what's happening? What's going on? But yes, we are all good, or at least I am. These gentlemen are very happy to be here once again, Kendrick, for this conversation. The community needs it. Thank you for this, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And speaking of songs, I was just looking at Grant's recent. He just posted a video. I think you were at the was it the Minnesota Vikings minicamp?
Yes, sir. The training camp, Minnesota
Tra- wh-
Vikings. Yes,
What was that
sir.
new song, Beyonce?
You can't break my soul. You can't break my soul. It's a club favorite. Everyone be going crazy in the club and stuff when they hear it. So.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we got a packed show today. We've got a couple of us that got to head out right after the show, so we'll go ahead and get started. Um, like I said, many of the conversations that we have had in the past have been centered around mental health, but I wanted to switch gears today because there are other aspects that us men in our community often go through. Some of those are centered around, creating boundaries for ourselves, making sure that we have the right people in our circle, and then just how to set those healthy boundaries. So that's going to be the discussion today. Hope you all enjoy it. Be sure to share this with somebody who may benefit. Like I said, we're trying to get these conversations out there because they're so important for our community and our men. So without further ado, the first question that we have, we're going to direct this to Grant. We sometimes hear people talk about setting boundaries and setting healthy boundaries. What does that mean and look like for you?
Yeah, setting healthy boundaries. I mean, just letting that person know, whoever it is, it could be like a coworker, it could be a spouse, it could be your parents, even family. Just letting them know what works for you and what doesn't work for you, and not moving the line for them. So if you need time by yourself, just let them know that, and just being confident. I know a lot of people always try to feel like, oh, I gotta help them, oh, I gotta do this. They were there for me, like friendship and family shouldn't pull up the receipt card. And what I mean by that is they shouldn't be able to say, hey, I did this for you, so now you got to make time for me. It doesn't work that way. You have to make sure that you're still in your boundaries, make sure you're confident, and make sure you are holding yourself accountable to hold those boundaries. That way they'll respect you more.
Ooh, I like what you said there, not having receipts, because I think a lot of times, and many of us may have been there a time or two, just having these expectations or assuming that somebody owes us something, and having those clear boundaries, as you hold up a receipt, having those clear expectations on how we want to be treated ourselves. That's one of the important parts of why we need to set those boundaries, because I worked with a lady a few years ago, and she always called me Smooth, and she's like, Smooth, you got to teach them how to treat you. And there was so much truth in what she was saying, because sometimes you do have to teach people how you want to be treated. Otherwise, you give them an inch and they try to take a mile. Vince, where are you at, or how do you feel about, setting boundaries, and what does that look like or mean to you?
Well, first off, I wonder what kind of boundary you had set up that she was calling you smooth and you just ran with it. I think that I think that is a boundary as well. I think very interesting room of gentlemen that you have here, as always, anyway. But I particularly am realizing as this question is coming up how hard of a time I'm having understanding how to set boundaries, particularly because uh, as an entertainer, as a host, I feel like we break so many of those boundaries constantly. Like in terms of making a first impression, like I feel like a lot of people come running at you or you jumping in somebody's face, dancing with them, already breaking their personal space a little bit sooner than if you were to just walk up to somebody on the street. So it's a little bit weird. I'm actually struggling with this question, believe it or not.
And you know what? That's I again, you always bring this sense of vulnerability to our conversations, which I absolutely appreciate. And that is something where, boundaries are tough for all of us. And I think one of the biggest things is setting boundaries with family members. I mean, you think about whether it be parents, siblings, cousins, aunts, uncles, those are the hardest, from my experience, those are some of the hardest boundaries to create. And some people say, well, that's disrespectful. Those are your elders. But the thing is, just because they are our elders doesn't mean that they can disrespect us. And so being able to establish those boundaries, but going back to you being vulnerable in this space to admit like, hey, that's an area where it's like, hey, it gives me a little bit of discomfort, which is completely fine because in our community, I think a lot of people need to see us men showing that vulnerable side of us is saying, hey, I don't have all the answers, or we don't have all the answers. We're still works in progress trying to figure out how we establish those boundaries and what they look like. Um, and to add on that, just to give our viewers and our listeners just context what we mean by boundaries. So an example may be if you have a friend and your friend just pops up at your house anytime he or she wants to, and you're like, whoa, 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 that's not cool. Like you got to call me before you come over. It's just not, don't just show up and knock on my door and say, hey, what's going on? You want to hang? So being able to say or set that boundary of letting that person know, call me, text me, let me know you're coming over, or let's plan something as opposed to just invading my space and just, showing up anytime you want. Um, Vince, I want to come back to you and I'm just curious and I don't want to go too deep into this because, obviously this is for public viewing, but just want to get a little bit of context. When you feel the discomfort around the question. Can you give context behind like where, or what it is you feel?
I'm glad you asked that, Kendrick. Honestly, the discomfort, and I'm glad that you gave us that explanation as well. The discomfort definitely comes from being such a people pleaser by heart and by profession. So again, it's my first interaction with somebody in their personal space might not be the same as anyone else. So that is something that I have come to deal with over the last decade plus, and being in relationships or dealing with maybe other people in relationships. I'm sure our cruise ship boys can attest to this. uh you might have somebody that might have a problem with with your personal boundary, or you might not necessarily recognize where your personal boundary begins in a lot of situations. So that, if let me know if that was clear enough for you. Basically, I'm talking about there's sometimes you end up dancing with people or talking to people. In my case, I've worked in sports where fans of certain teams get very excited, so they might break a boundary of, hey, I can talk to you anytime I want because every time I talk to you, we always talk about this team, and it's just like, all right, I'm laying in bed with my fiance at 11 p.m. We're not, what I'm saying? Please do not constantly DM me about this. But yeah, in regards to family, I think the most uncomfortable boundary, as you mentioned, probably just comes where family just thinks they can do whatever they want. They treat you as if whatever the original boundary that they recognize you as, if you're the kid, the little cousin, or the son, daughter, people will walk all over you because, well, this is the way that I always treat them. They never had, anything to say to me, or I was always the elder. So it's difficult once you realize, all right, I've at some point while we were not as close to each other, I created my own personal space, and you're violating that. And it happens. It happens, and we have to grow through it.
And I appreciate you going into detail on that, and kind of that last point you hit is sometimes our elders think they can say and do uh, whatever they want, and on top of that, sometimes we have to double down and remind people of what our boundaries are because I mean we live in this day and age, there's so many different influences and distractions that people forget. We interact with so many people, and I'm sure with the three of you, you're in the industry where you meet so many different people to where you're meeting new people and they just have to be reminded or let it be known that, hey, you know what? You don't have the permission to talk to me how you want, or you don't have permission to touch me just because, I'm in your space or whatever the case may be. Um, but again, Vince, I appreciate you always, bringing that vulnerability and open to, saying, hey, I don't know. I'm uncomfortable here because, like I said, there are a lot of men that need to see that because we have this idea of this almost this hyper masculinity of where I need to be tough at all times, and if I get in touch with my feelings, that's wrong, or I feel like I'm not a man anymore because I share what I'm feeling. So again, I appreciate you. Going over to Dr. E and Grant. Uh, as we continue this around boundaries, why do you think it's so difficult for people to establish and maintain boundaries, and more specifically, saying no to people, especially significant others? And we'll start with Dr. E.
First of all, I will call before I come. I won't just pop over out the blue. No, after dog, when you said just popping up, I was like, hold on, who popping up? Well, when I read the question, I was thinking to myself, have I had to set any real boundaries? And then I thought, I was like, I guess, yeah, I have, because people know, call me, bro. You call me before, unless I extend. There's a difference between like, hey, you can come and see me anytime, and I don't say that unless I mean it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm one of those people like they ever since they you coming over, like even on the ship, right? We work in such close quarters on the ship, and my office is also part of my living quarters, right? So it's a small thing. I don't mind people using my bathroom, but they got to take their shoes off before they go into my bedroom, right? So my office, they can wear their shoes, but if you have to use my bathroom, you're gonna have to take your shoes off. It's a very small thing. If you can't do that, you can use the restroom somewhere else. And it's like that little small boundary. And I was out of the room, and somebody was saying that they had to use the restroom. They was like, "Oh, make sure you take your shoes off every single night." Like I wasn't there, and they was like, "Oh yeah, Dr. E don't like that. He don't like you guys your shoes on, so make sure you take it out." So it's like little boundaries like that, and I feel like if people don't respect certain small things, you can see how they're gonna take it the wrong way. And I feel like, again, because we're entertainers, it's difficult for us to be able to say, "Hey, don't do that." But for me, I've been able to navigate it in such a way whereas when I'm on the floor, I know I'm on the floor. So the moment I leave my room, I'm on entertainment mode. So I'm always gonna be on. So I'm expecting that kind of energy. It only happens when you cross those certain lines with people, or you get into a more intimate space, or it's like a smaller room, and then people are trying to ask you certain questions, and you don't want to respond in a way that, like, you don't really know me like that, so I'm not gonna answer the question like that. And so I feel like it's things like that can become challenging because people, and again, majority of hosts and entertainers are from a history of people pleasers. So we want to do that, but I learned how to protect that particular energy that's there. And saying no is very, very powerful. I've learned saying no makes your yeses more engaging. People are like, oh, he said no. So if it's like, hey, we're going to such and such, you want to come? No, I'm not going out. It's like, what? Why you don't want to come because X, Y? No, I just don't want to go. And it's like, and it's so freeing. It's like to wear the truth, to vibrate in your truth is very freeing to do that. That don't mean be, out there just like just being mean to people just because it's the truth, like telling people they're ugly just because they're ugly. But like, wearing your truth and vibrating and saying like, I don't want to do that, not making an excuse like, oh, I'll see about it. No, just say no. I don't no, I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel you on that. But why do you think it's so hard for people to say no? As far as and whether it be in your space as far as entertainment or just in your personal life or people that you've seen, like why is it so hard for people to say no and mean what they say?
Well, I know you were talking specifically about couples. So in entertainment, it's harder for us to say no because we can we eat the energy. So when people are giving us energy, we feed off that energy that's coming to us. And so while we're there, and we see, you can tell when you're making somebody's night. Somebody's really enjoying themselves when it's a situation they haven't been in, and they're very receptive. And you're like, okay, cool, this is good, this is good. But I got to start cutting it off. I got to start taking it back, and so I feel like that's difficult. The other misconception about a couple, with your significant other, is that you haven't really found a way to set boundaries. And so many people believe there's this misconception that this is my, this is who you are. So I share everything with this person. And it's like, well, do, are you supposed to share everything with her? Like, you get to questions and you find out things like, I don't think I want to share that with her. Not because it's going to be a negative outlook on you or negative outlook on her, just because maybe you don't feel like you're in a place to do that. And that's why I said, as men, women have to earn our vulnerability. Like you got to earn the right to be like, to get to that space with me where I'm like, hey, like that really took me out at this age. This takes me back. And I'll never forget that. Like yo, that like I feel like it has to be earned. It has to be something in the sense where we're getting there. And it may sound selfish, but again, that's another boundary that you get there because they haven't gotten to a certain place that they think that they're supposed to be in your heart. I feel like that's silly, but that's also the common misconception about relationships and about boundaries because you want to be able to protect uh, your your mate's view. I want the woman to. I want to be able to protect how I look in her eyes at all times, right? So I may want to share something with her that's going, that's touching to my heart. It may make me tear up or something, but I don't like. Am I at a place where I can cry right now? You know what I'm saying? Do I want her? How's she gonna look at me after I say this? How's it gonna relate to other things? Is she in a good place to receive it? You also got to be thinking about that too because you got to curate that space to be vulnerable, to share those kind of things, and to set those boundaries. So I feel like that's one of the main boundaries with men, as we have to protect ourselves to make sure that we still get to uphold the vision of who we are to the woman. Because you've seen women, like women have seen men or seen men cry. They're like, "Oh, girl, I didn't like that," and like it just turned me off. And you like, yo, and maybe they wasn't at the right part of the relationship. And then you've seen other women talk about, yo, he like my husband, he broke down, and my man, he broke down, and it touched me because I had never seen him like that, and it really changed us. It opens us up. But you can hear the difference in where they are in their relationships. I feel like when those boundaries are crossed.
If anybody's looking to hire a coach, Dr. Ease, he's accepting clients. Man,
Oh,
I love your perspective, Dr. E, because there's so much truth in that as far as that being able to establish those boundaries with our significant other, which can be sometimes be difficult, especially if two people haven't had the conversation around, what are our specific boundaries in a relationship and, what does that look like? And that's where the importance comes in is being able to not only say no to your partner, but also your partner being comfortable with hearing the word no. And I think a lot of times in my past, I used to be a people pleaser, so it was very difficult for me to even say no. And then one day I was like, you know what? I can't continue doing this. because if I continue doing this, I'm going to put myself in a position where I have animosity or some type of negative energy towards my partner. And so everything that you said there, Dr. E, I mean, there was just gold in that. Listeners and viewers, you have to rewind that. Like I said, he's accepting clients right now. uh, but going over to Grant. Grant, why do you think it is important for us to be able to say no to our partners, especially if we're in, some type of committed relationship or just any type of relationship?
Oh man, it's funny. TV emulates life. Art just emulates life. I mean, we in the Black community, I know y'all seen Family Matters, right? Y'all remember Steve Urkel, right? Like boundaries, right there, man. Like for one, if it was a real Black family, y'all know doggone well we would lock them doors. Same with Sister Roger. Same with hang with Mr. Cooper, Tyler. These people would not walk in your living spaces like that. And it goes back to Dr. E's point. I think it's all about respect, but it also has to start with you too. If y'all know Dr. E don't play when you come in his room, people are going to be looking for ways to test Dr. E. So like when they say, "Oh yeah, you can't use Dr. E's bathroom because like he's a very clean person. He doesn't like that." They're going to start looking at what you're doing. So they're like, "Okay, let's look around. Okay, I see Dr. E's bed's clean. I see his sheets are pulled up. I see that he's organized." They're going to respect you in a much more dignifying way rather than he's like, "Oh, I really don't like anyone after 8." But they're gonna look. People are gonna always look for proof to try to like see what I can get away with. They're gonna push you. So while as it's important to say no, you have to back it up. You have to walk the walk. You have to talk the talk. Now I'm sure Dr. E, you can attest. You can jump in right here, but I'm sure you're a clean person because you want those shoes off, right?
Right, with that and energy. It's like, you know what I'm saying? Like people, this whole outside shoes and like outside clothes on bed is such a funny concept to the rest of the world. People like, what you mean outside clothes? Like taking a bath before they go to bed. I'm like, how you not take a bath? How you not shower before you go to sleep? Like you literally wearing the entire outside on your body in your sleep. You're gonna sleep on it again tomorrow. So it's like things like that. And so like even in my bedroom, I don't have a TV. There's no TV in my bedroom because my bed is made for, sleeping and sexing. That's it. That's the only two things my bed is made for. And so I want to protect the energy that's in there. Like that's, so I want that's how I do it.
Or yeah, 100%. I can attest to that too. But yeah, back to the point, Kendrick. I think it starts with yourself, and also there's like a balance. So I think part of being an entertainer, we have this masculine energy and this feminine energy. The feminine energy is like we want to nurture, we want to be there, we want to entertain people, but at the same time, we're all human beings. I know growing up, I had a mom and I had a dad. There's certain things that I could go to my mom for that I knew my dad doesn't play that. You know what I mean? So I think that's kind of like everyone else. We always have like a good cop, bad cop kind of situation. So I think the reason why it's so important to step into that masculine energy and say no, it's not to be mean, like you said, but it's just to say, hey, this is my beliefs. I stand behind it. This is what I do every day. And that's where they can respect you. Respect is earned, not given. So
Yes, sir. I love it. And being able to step into that masculinity, like you said, and saying no and mean it. Um, a lot of times, and I've seen it and I've been there before where I've even said no and then I go back on saying no, which then that just opens up a whole can of worms for disaster, negativity, all those things. But because it's sometimes hard to say no, what are things us men can do in order not to feel anxiety around saying no to maybe our friends, loved ones, or family? We'll go over to Vince with that one.
Can I just start by saying Grant blew my mind just now because I didn't even realize that my parents probably would have whooped Steve Urkel's ass if he came. Just
right.
a random overall Negro strolling into the house with his outside clothes, sitting in my. Come on now, that's crazy. I never even thought like everybody loves Steve Urkel, but that's crazy. I'm
But
sorry.
see how so look. So in high school, like my house was the spot because my mom would like invite. So all my friends they would come over, but like she would know they would be there because in her mind it was safer to have us at home, talking smack after football practice, before football practice. So like people would be coming in and out, like, oh, we're going to Bevel house, oh, we're going to Eve's house. and because that would just be the place. So I like at that point, people were walking in and out the garage though. So I can't say that ain't true because that I think about like, dang, that was my life. And then my neighbors who were like they were like my own brothers, and we going back and forth each other's house all the time. And if we coming in the front door, we knock. Now that's different. If we go in the front door, we knock. If the garage door was closed, it was like signs to like, okay, maybe we should knock today. But like other than that, if you know I'm beating, I'm opening the door. I'm coming in like, hey, what y'all doing?
I mean,
Steve would have got shot. He's from Chicago. He would have got shot if that was a real case.
You had to at least knock, though. At least knock. Let somebody know you was coming. That's all. But yeah, sorry to throw that off. That was that. Oh, interesting. All right, but yeah, in reference to setting boundaries again, is honestly is something that I am struggling with currently too. We didn't go too deep into the mental health check-in, but I currently right now I'm struggling to call people in my family that I know for a fact are also struggling to tell me that they can't or don't want to attend my wedding. So to me, that there's some kind of, this is why I want to talk to my therapist about my inner child, my younger trauma, because I know that there's some blockage, there's some kind of generational block or something taking place where my family doesn't want to talk to each other for some reason. I don't know how to get deeper into it, but for some reason there's some misconnection. Like we talk, we chat, we love each other, but certain topics in reference to money, important, you know what I'm saying, important dates, death is a huge topic, unfortunately. I will say that, you know, even growing up with a funeral home in the family, I'm still very, very uncomfortable with discussing death, and can't tell you exactly what it is. Again, the biggest thing about your family is letting people know, like Dr. E said, yo, if this is my rule, please respect that. But you also have to make your rules known, because I think that's a huge part of why people struggle with having their own space. Like even my father told me, "Oh, when you get your own house, I'm coming to put my feet up on stuff and start knocking stuff over." I also, you know, I don't know if people struggle with being themselves in regards to creativity, in regards to their sexuality, stuff like that around their family, because they're afraid of being judged. They don't want to let their family members know, hey, look, this is who I am, and they're going to keep the boundary of, you know, close to their body, almost inside where nobody can see, because they know that their family members probably will not respect that. So I would say in any regard, you just have to try to be as loud and proud about what you're doing as you possibly can, so people know, hey, look, this is my boundary. Like don't cross it, you know, appreciate it, but also respect it.
100%. And I appreciate that perspective and you sharing that information. I think, you know, when we do think about those conversations with family members, you know, sometimes it can be one of those things where we want to have the conversation because maybe we are comfortable in being uncomfortable because we've done our own healing. But then on the flip side of that, there are some people that shut down to the idea of having specific conversations to where it's like it's almost we almost put too much energy in trying to have those conversations with loved ones to where sometimes, at least I know for me, from my perspective, I don't know how all y'all are, but it's almost I'm much rather reserve some of that energy because I know if I bring up a specific conversation with somebody, whether it be friends or loved ones or family, that it's just not going to go anywhere. And I'm going to get more frustrated because I took the time to try to open up that door when I knew damn well that it was locked, there was no key, nobody was going to open it up. So in a way, sometimes I almost feel like it's my fault that I even entertained it. But then on the flip side of that, it's like, well, maybe if I knock long enough, eventually somebody will find a key and open up that door. And Dr. E, you had one other thing that you wanted to mention. I wanted to get your thoughts or what you had.
Yeah, just for like Vince, I have been, you know, so we hadn't really spoken about our family's past, but so my dad and my mom got divorced when I was one. Okay. My dad then got married to his next wife. They were only married for like 2 years. They got divorced. Then he got married to my sister's mom. Then they were together for a good chunk. Then they got divorced. And he got married to his last wife, and then she passed away like 2 years ago. So he's been married like 4 times. And my dad on that side of the family, my side of the family, there's not a lot of communication. So I've been that like that catalyst that keeps all of them talking basically just through me. They'll ask about the others, but they won't talk to each other. And I felt necessary because again, we want people to feel good. That's what we want. We want people in together. It's a party like your wedding. But bro, your wedding is your wedding. If they don't want to be there, then they don't need to be there. A lot of people had this misconception about a wedding and the people that are there when you get married. The people that are supposed to be at the wedding are the people who are going to hold you accountable to your vows for if anything were to happen. To be like, hey, if you think about divorce or she think about divorce, they come and be like, hey, let's talk about this. Let's break it down. Like, remember X, Y, and Z. Let's hold it together. So like, I feel like protecting that energy on your wedding day, if the people in your family don't want to be a part of that, then they've set a boundary for you. Then you don't have to include them in that. You know what I mean? And it sounds harsh, but as you start to curate your own family, like that is like one of the main things. Like, yo, I got to protect my space. If somebody gonna be negative about my wife, that's your wife, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's your wife. Like, I was listening. I can't remember who. I don't know. It was some scholar, and he was talking about how he has this test where he asked men like, what happens if you see a guy, if a man spits in your wife's face. And he said, basically, that's the question. He said, and people like, oh, I want to ask, like, what kind of mood is the guy in? As I heard the question, like, my hair stood up. I'm like, what? And he said, because if a woman spit in my wife's face, if a man spit in my wife's face, then I'm going to jail that night. You know what I'm saying? I was like, yeah, like, and that's the kind of energy you got to have. And so, like you'll see people will start navigating themselves out of your life in certain ways, and they can still be there, but not in the capacity that they were before because you've elevated. And I don't mean, and elevating don't mean you got to bring everybody with you. So like, bro, I know it may feel bad now in the terms of like who's not coming to your wedding or who you don't think want to show up to your wedding or don't want to support you. But hey man, I support you. You and your wife deserve to have, your fiance deserve to have like a beautiful wedding. And like, try in your own time, in your own space to release that before that day comes because you don't want to be clogging that energy. Like, why they ain't here? You know?
Appreciate that, man.
Powerful. Dr. E's coming with it today. He's coming with it today. And that's, gosh, curate your family, curate your people. And I mean, we do, as far as like social media, we see who we want to follow or unfollow. And like Dr. E said, there are some times where it's just like at the end of the day, that day is about you and your wife. And if people don't want to enjoy it with y'all, that's on them, that's their own business. But and that's a perfect segue into rolling into our next topic, kind of switching gears. But we talked about how important it is setting boundaries, but having people around us who respect our boundaries is equally important. And a lot of times they say you become the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And so I want to hear from Dr. E since he's been on fire today. I want to hear from him as far as what is your process or things that you look for when you consider to let somebody into your circle? And no pun intended with that one.
Well, nah. So I'm an observer. I like energy is real. Good energy, like when people like now people are becoming more and more aware of your brain and your gut brain. Butterflies in the stomach. You know what I'm saying, or got a funny feeling, and like you got to recognize those things if you're paying attention to it. If you like locked in. So I like to observe people, and I get to see. I listen to see what they talk about. If they gossiping about people, that means they probably gonna gossip about me. Just like little things like that before I can decide if they're gonna be in my inner circle. And then some people you'll click with immediately. It's like a twin flame situation. Like, yo, like bro, what's like you know what I'm saying? Like, and that's it. And there's this new wave now that's coming through. That's like, oh, if I show love to my homeboy, or to my cousin, or to my friend, then I'm gay. Like I'm growing above that. Like, bro, I can appreciate my friend over here. Like, I'm very secure in my masculinity and in my sexuality, that I know I can tell you I love you, and I don't have to like cringe up to be like, oh, somebody gonna be like gay like that. I know that's not gonna be me. So like in those certain kind of situations when you meet like, oh, bro, that's my homie for life. That's my boy. That's my brother. You can feel those things. But for me, I'm a big observer of like how people do things. I sit back and I watch the room. I watch how people react to them, how they respond to others, because no matter what kind of mask, and we all wear a version of a facade at some point in our life around people, the truth will always come out. It'll peek through a little bit. You'll see, like, oh, what was that? Like, I saw something like, hey, like the age old topic. If they're gonna be rude to the waiter, then that means they're gonna be rude to X, Y, and Z. And it's so much in that whole thing, because that means that they have now set a standard for somebody that they don't even know, but just because of what they do, they're going to treat them like that. And so, I feel like it's those kind of situations where I pay attention to watch to see who I'm gonna let into my circle, and those kind of processes right there before letting people in. And then because I am an observer, I get a lot of people that want to come and they want to unload and they want to talk and they want to talk, and then I'm a listener, so I listen, and I'm paying attention to these things, and then I also listen to see how are these people going to, if they're gonna ask me, are they gonna ask me about it? Are they just gonna come and unload on me and unload on me and unload on me? It's like, no homo. And I'm like, are they gonna come and are they gonna come and do that the whole time, right? And I'm like, are they gonna ever say anything else? Are they gonna ask like, hey, how are you doing? I've been talking about myself. How are you feeling? Or if they're gonna recognize those things. So those kind of things like matters to me. And then there's also a way that certain people can receive your help. For instance, like there's a situation with my cousin right now, and like I can only help him the way I know he wants to be helped. Certain things you don't want to talk about. Certain stuff you just want to be around some people to make you forget about what you're doing. You know what I mean? And other people like, hey, what's going on with this? How can we help? Or they are like, oh, I'm gonna come see you. Like, let's say for instance, you and your wife going through something, and they want to come down to your house because that makes them feel better. That's not what you need. That's not what you asked for. That ain't what we wrote down on the list saying I need this. They're doing that to make themselves feel better in helping you. You see what I'm saying? You see there's a difference. And I feel like in those things, those are real boundaries, those are the time when you really need to know what your boundaries are and how to set those boundaries. Because if you can't articulate, hey, you're not doing this for me, you're doing this for you. You know what I'm saying? I don't, and that's like that's something I've noticed. I noticed this like maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, that like people are just doing that to make themselves feel better, or like the people that go and buy groceries for people online, they in this content, right? They're like, oh yeah, and then the guy's crying because he's like, oh, I was about to lose my house, or I had rent, and thank you so much. It's like that's a real intimate moment, but you pretty much like you tear poaching for these tears. You're doing that because it makes you feel better. You're not really doing it for that person. You see. So.
No, I feel you on that. And your when you said just observing, listening to what people say, what the conversations are, man, like you said, that gut feeling and being able to feel somebody else's energy. And as I think I know Grant is, Dr. E sounds like Vince may be, but as being 4 empaths on this call, we take in all energy, and you all have to, because you're entertainers. You have to be able to read your crowd. You have to read the people that you're around so much, and one little shift in energy, you can feel that as being entertainers. But then on the flip side of that, that also probably makes all three of y'all very good at vetting the right people to let into your circle, because it's like that one person that you let in, and that's the wrong egg, can ruin the whole batch. And that's why it's important vetting the people that we are around, because that negative energy is contagious, and eventually it'll pass its way, and then we're just like, man, why does everything feel so weird when I'm around this person? Why do I feel like my energy's been zapped? Grant, as far as your process and how you decide whether or not people are allowed into your circle, what does that look like?
Yeah, 100% agree with Dr. You was saying. My thing is you are what you attract. So, and I say it again, you are what you attract. And so, like, pretty much, if you're around negative people in church, you hanging around them, there's a good chance that's gonna rub off on you. With me, all you guys on my call, I surround myself with you. I usually talk to you guys weekly. Me and Vince, like you guys know, we have like weekly meetings on Tuesdays. Cause I want to learn. I want to be more like him. I see him doing his thing with the LA Clippers. He's trying to aspire to be on television. Same with Dr. E. Kendrick. Same with you. So I'm surrounding my people. I'm surrounding myself with people I want to be like or who I want to emulate. My thing is, I shouldn't be the smartest person in the room. At the end of the day, if I'm the smartest person in the room, I'm not learning anything. I'm a student of life. So, yeah, pretty much, like I said too, you're attracting what you are. If you're like a good frequency, if you're a good person, you're gonna attract more of that in your life. If you're clean, hopefully you would see, oh yeah, you ain't on that level yet. I'm gonna hit you back when you get clean. And when I say clean, I just mean like clean your room or you're like you're clean the way you speak, the way you talk to yourself. One thing I like to do is affirmations in the morning. So I always say I'm attracting like-minded people in my life each and every day. And so I'm literally priming my subconscious mind to attract that, going back to the energy thing, like where energy can no longer be created nor destroyed, only transfer. So you got to be making sure that you are good as a person. That way you can transfer other energy to other people so they can feel good as well. So
We got Reverend Dr. E on the call and Reverend Grant Jones on the call as well.
I'm just a deacon, man. And I'm just a deacon. I was just going off what Dr. E was saying.
But
Preach,
it,
preach up.
but preach on. But man, it's this conversation is powerful today because there are people we see them every day as far as why aren't they making the moves that we know they can make, or why aren't they advancing in their careers or their lives like we know they can, and we start looking at the people in their circles like, I get it. They're rolling around with this dude, this dude, this dude that aren't really bringing anything to the table. And I like what you said, Grant, is you don't want to be the smartest person in the room because and that's the thing that some people uh, can take away from this talk today is being the smartest person in the room isn't always a benefit because we want to be in a position where we're always growing and always learning from other people and just in life in general. And if we tend to be in all the spaces that we're in and we're the smartest person, we need to ask ourselves, why aren't we leveling up or why aren't we talking to people that are levels above us so we can get game from them as well? But and one of the things when we let people in our circle and we kick people out of our circles in the space in the entrepreneurial space, they often say, you know, quick to fire and slow to hire. And I like that quote is because as soon as we sense somebody that's negative or somebody that we don't feel is vibing with where we're going, we fire them. But then on the flip side of that, hiring somebody into our friend group, that's a process that we have to, like Dr. E said, we have to vet those people. We have to see what they're about. We need to see what they're like as far as their moves, their business moves, the people they surround themselves with. So, Vince, I'm curious to know, have you had to fire anybody, any friends in recent years?
Yes, believe it or not. Yeah. I'm glad that you said the part about being an empath too, because I recognize that definitely being a people pleaser and like feeling all the feelings, it kind of adds to like my thoughts about wanting to like interact or even create a boundary with someone. I've definitely had to get rid of an assistant. Unfortunately, after praying for an assistant for so many years, I'm like, yo, like I'm already unorganized enough. I need you to respond when I like, like that was something. I was forming a friendship. We talked about family a lot, mental health. But it was it came at a bad time. There were a lot of things going on in people's lives, and I completely understand that. As someone that is, I consider myself to be a mental health advocate. I was like, all right, I can barely handle this. This is a hard thing for me, and I recognize that you can barely handle this as well. So I think it would be best if we don't try to tire ourselves out trying to handle it together. So that is something that's kind of rough. I've had, you know, friends that were like photographers or videographers, and I'm like, not just exactly what I'm looking for. And me specifically, I don't know if this is a, you know, being involved in dealing with so many people that you might not have the most pleasant interactions with, or a New York thing, but my fallback game is crazy. Like I like I if I'm not feeling you, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you might not necessarily know, I just will disappear from your life at some point. Uh and that is, I don't know if that's a boundary thing, if that's a, you know, me avoiding conflict thing, but that's just where it's at. It sucks that it has to happen if you have to fire a friend, but sometimes people got to recognize that's not necessarily their strength or the best relationship. That's all.
It's all part of life, letting people go when it's their time, or when we feel like, you know, it's not working out. Grant, have you had to fire any friends in recent years?
I don't really like the term fire. Um, I let friends go, or I stop getting on that frequency. Because at the end of the day, I think you said it, Kendra. You hit it on the nail. Like, when you're ready, you'll let them go. I believe everything happens for a reason. People are put in your life for a reason, and it's up to you to learn and take away from what that person brought to your life and how you can learn and become a better person. So I like to say terminate, because like as those people, you might disagree with somebody, but like, you know what? Now that I'm older, I can appreciate the kind of person they were. And be like, I'll be back, you know. So you never know. You might need to rekindle that relationship with that person that you let go. Once you're ready as well, too. They might not always be the problem. You might be the toxic one. And they were just trying to help you out, giving you the cold hard facts about the truth of the matter of what you were being at that time and point. So I'm never one quick to fire. At the end of the day, I kind of let people decide how they want to deal with me. I'm here if you need me, but I'm not gonna make a more of an effort or less of an effort to be in your life or out of it. You have to figure that out for yourself, and vice versa. If I want to be in someone's life, I'm gonna be in their life, and that's just point blank. So
I like your perspective, and you can tell that spirituality vibe from you, you coming out as far as, you know, showing up with peace, showing up with love, regardless if, you know, you have to terminate somebody or
how's you know what I mean? They come back, come on.
Grant, the master impersonator. Um, but you know, as we wrap up this phone call, I know we talked about, you know, whether you want to call it fire, terminate, get rid of, however it looks in whoever's listening and watching, however it looks like for you. I want to go to Dr. E to wrap this up. You know, some people don't know how to handle with what comes with letting somebody go or firing a friend or terminating a friend. When you've gotten rid of or removed yourself from other people, what was their reaction and how did you handle it, or how do you typically handle those situations?
First of all, I love how, because I feel like we the only type of people that can say this. What Grant said, if I say I'm being your life, dog, I'm in your life, bro. Like, you can't, I ain't going. What you gonna do about it, huh? You gonna change your number? I'll just find you on Instagram, dog. And I love that, because like I feel like those are real friends. Like that is hilarious to me. When Vince was like, oh, that was hilarious. But like for me, you do have to fire certain people. I'm one of those people that if you pay attention, friends will fire themselves. And what I mean by that, like sometimes there's a time and place for everything, and then that conversation to come up like, yo, why want to hang out no more? Because the X, Y, and Z. This is what you did. That's why we don't hang out no more. I'm glad you asked, because I was wondering how long it's gonna take you to notice that we ain't really kicking it no more. Because you on a different thing. I tried to encourage you. I see you going down a certain path. I don't want to go down that path. It don't mean I don't love you, but it just means I can't rock with you the way I used to rock with you. And so I feel like if you're not paying attention again by setting your own boundaries personally, if you set goals, your goals will set your boundaries. So if you set goals for your life, then your goals they'll set your new boundaries for people. So if you're trying to attain something and you're hanging out with people that's not on that same vibrational energy is real, if they ain't on that same length, then you're gonna stop hanging out with them, not because you're consciously doing it, but subconsciously you on the grind trying to get to your next goal. So it's not gonna have time for you to do that. And real friends, you can pick up and call at any time. So that's another thing. Some people think because somebody's not there in your life at all times over your shoulder, like, hey, what you doing, that they're no longer your real friend. But you know, if you got real friends, then you can pick up the phone and it'll be like nothing ever changed. Y'all catch up with whatever it is from that point. But like, I feel like some people who are in the headspace that they are heavily attached to people or they have abandonment issues, when it comes to letting go of a friend that's bad for them, then and they start recognizing it, it starts becoming harder and harder and harder to fire that friend because now it's weighing on you like, oh, well, I don't think I'll ever find another friend like this. And it comes back to again to those abandonment issues. Like, why do you feel like you can't let this friend go? Like, it's like people are in your and this is the whole thing. People come to your life for a season or a reason. Either way, you're gonna find out one way or another in time. In due time, you're gonna find out for a season or a reason. And you got to learn to accept fall ain't gonna be here forever. So let fall come so you can get to spring so you can get to summer. You know, they was oh yeah, there was a fall friend, but you know, they had to fall back. They had to fall out of my life. You know what I'm saying? I had to spring into my future. You got to get it like, you know, you got to think about it like that. And so, you know, for those people who have real abandonment issues or attachment issues, you have to pay attention to who you attach yourself with. And are they really draining you? And what are you afraid of losing by losing this friend? You know, because I feel like that's only the type of people it takes place with. It takes place with uh, people with attachment issues, people with, you know, protecting issues, and they feel like they got to save, you know, save your concept, where they got to save this person all the time. You can't save them. Project Pat told you a long time ago, don't save her, dog. She don't want to be saved, you know. So you can't save everybody. And we want to. We all. I'm a comic book head. I got my Miles Morales shirt on. You know, Grant got his. He gets paint on the back. We all want to save somebody. We want to help them, but at some point, you got to save yourself, bro. And you got to give them a chance to save themselves. And if not, you got to keep on pushing. So I feel like real friends are on board with whatever's positive in your life, and they'll be there. The ones that's not are fire themselves. You don't have to worry about firing them because they won't be there. You won't know how it's going to affect them because they're not there. You ain't around them, so you don't know. And if they pick up the phone to do it, either they're big enough, they'll call and be like, "Dang, dang, I was right. You was right. I was messing up." And they may come and then y'all may, you know, rekindle their friendship and it grows out of that. But, you know, seasoning for a reason.
I love it. I love it. And man, this was such a powerful conversation, and we were able to see and hear different perspectives from each of us. And the last thing I'll say when it comes to, you know, dealing with those situations, whether you have to fire somebody or, you know, connect with somebody months from now, at the end of the day, we have to make sure that we are still maintaining our own mental health, making sure that we are still in a space where we can show up for other people, regardless if somebody doesn't want us there or whatever the case may be. But the other thing I'll also say is there is nobody, there is absolutely nobody on earth that anybody should ever lose their mental health over. I'm going to say that one more time. There is nobody on earth that you should ever lose your mental health over. Far too often, we get into these one-sided relationships or we get into these situationships that aren't good for us and our mental health. We have to understand that one, creating boundaries, we've got to make sure that we have those strong boundaries because mental health isn't something to play with. And especially if you have somebody in your life that's toxic, that's not adding any type of value. And then the second part of that is being able to walk away from things that aren't respecting you. That can be friends, that can be family, that can be significant others. Again, there's nobody on this earth that you should lose your mental health over. And I'm going to leave it at that. I hope you all enjoyed this conversation. It was a powerful conversation. There's a lot of gems in this conversation that we had today. But I hope that you can make the next step in creating those healthy boundaries for yourself because once you create those healthy boundaries, life is so much more positive, and you have a much more appreciation for the love that you show yourself and other people. So as we wrap this up, I appreciate our guest today. Grant, how can people find you in some of the future work that you're currently doing?
Oh man, oh man. Like you said, I just God's good all the time, man. Check me out on Instagram. I just DJ the Vikings training camp. The video's up on TikTok right now if you want to check me out. You can follow me at grantjonesentertainment.com, the ultimate entertainer at your service. Check me out. GJ Entertainer.
I appreciate you, Grant. Dr. E, how can people find you in some of the future work that you're doing?
You can follow me on Facebook, Reverend Dr. E. If you're on Instagram, is Reverend _ Dr. _ E. And you can always see me on your TV.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you. And Vince, how can people find you and some of the future work that you're doing?
Of course, Vince Bracy on Instagram. Search for me on YouTube, on the internet, vincebracy.com. And at the Jasmine Show, just because I included last time on YouTube. And you can come check me out at Rugged Maniac on one of these things. I forgot to hang out with my guy Dr. E too. That was accountability, y'all. Accountability is also part of and part of inviting people into your circle. All right. But yeah, thanks again, Kendra. Appreciate this, man.
And I appreciate the three of y'all. Grant, I appreciate the sense of humor that you always bring, that spirituality and the positivity that you bring in all these conversations. Dr. E, I appreciate your thought process and the way you think about things. It's always great to see somebody that is, like we said, a level up than us, or somebody that we want to emulate and be like. Dr. E, you bring a presence about you that is very mature, and I appreciate everything that you say. I learn and I take away pieces of information that you say, and I try to implement into my own life. And Vince, as always, I appreciate your vulnerability in many of these podcasts that we've done. It's something that I truly appreciate, and I want to strive to be more vulnerable. It's a work in progress. We're all works in progress, but the first thing is admitting that we're trying to grow and trying to continue to heal within our community. For those that are watching, for those that are listening, we all appreciate you taking the time to tap into this episode. There's many more coming. Be sure to go out and follow me on Instagram at Kendrick Coates. You can also follow me on Facebook and TikTok. Until next time, we appreciate you. Thank you, and we'll see you soon.